Welcome to Outdrive, folks. I'm your host, Cliff Callis, and each week I'm bringing you actionable marketing insights you can apply to reach, connect with, and convert rural American consumers. Outdrive is powered by Callis, a full-service advertising agency with a focus on marketing rural America. Callis offers a wide range of integrated marketing services, including website development, search engine marketing, social media, video, and digital. We develop strategic and creative campaigns to build your brand and your business, and you can learn more about us at ecallis.com. Now join me in the front seat as we head out on the road to success. Let's go. Hey folks, welcome to Outdrive. We've got another great story to share with you today about life and work in rural America. One of the topics I enjoy discussing on our podcast is economic development, which can take on many different forms. Today's guest brings us his perspective on the manufacturing and office opportunities we have here in rural America, as well as the abundance of high quality of life and a low cost of living. Ben Vickers is Manager of Business Development for the Springfield, Missouri Area Chamber of Commerce. In his role, Ben is tasked with attracting new business and jobs to a diverse 10-county area around Springfield, as well as working to help retain and grow the businesses already located there. Ben has a great perspective on what it takes to be successful in economic development, and I really enjoyed hearing his take on rural America being more about a mindset and a lifestyle than a geography. Welcome to Outdrive, Ben.
Thank you so much, Cliff, for having me. I'm pleased to be here.
Well, I'm happy you're here as well. Been excited to get to know you and find out what's going on with Springfield and economic development. You know, it's certainly one of my favorite topics to talk about. I sat on a regional board here where I live and studied economics a little bit in college, not to say that it's anything like it is today. So I want to get your perspective on economic development because it can go a lot of different ways and, hear what's going on in Springfield. And then just from a marketing perspective, things you're doing or seeing that are working right now. But there's lots of different things we've got to talk about. Why don't we start by having you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Yeah, couldn't agree more. Economic development is also one of my favorite topics. So I'm very pleased to be here. And I'm especially interested too in rural economic development. So I grew up in a very small town, about 3,000 people. In between there and another small town, my dad had a farm. So I grew up in rural communities. Agriculture is just part of my background, but I was going to college and, as what happens your senior year of college, my mom called and she said, "What are you going to do with your political science degree?" And I said, "Oh, I'm sure there's a lot of political science jobs out there. I'm sure I'll be fine, Mom. Don't worry about it." She said, "Well, there's this job back home in El Dorado Springs where I grew up. I think you should apply for it. I think you'd be good at it." And I said, "I'm not going to move home after college. No, thank you. Bye." But I thought about it some more. I decided to apply. And whenever I did apply in the interview, I realized the questions that they were asking, how would you handle this? How would you do this? I realized what economic development really was. And I realized it was a good opportunity to help my hometown and the area that produced me that I, growing up, always knew had a lot of opportunity, but that it felt like nobody was tapping into. And so it felt like a really good opportunity to be helpful. So I ended up starting my career in Nevada, Missouri, and Vernon County, Missouri on like March 1st of 2020. And about 2 weeks later, the world just imploded, right? But for me professionally, that ended up being one of the best case scenarios because it forced me not only, I knew that I was on a good track, but it forced me to really dig deep, really learn the ins and outs of economic development and how it actually worked. I was calling 30 businesses a day there for a couple of months. Just, "Hey, how are you doing? What do you need? How's COVID hitting you? What do you need?" And then that was a huge learning experience for me. All of the conferences, all of the events, everything that was scheduled for the next year ended up going online. Most of it was free, which is great, especially for a rural economic developer with not a huge budget. And so I ended up just sitting inside learning for, a year almost through all the webinars I could get my hands on. And so that really affirmed that I was in the right place. I did end up marrying a girl from Springfield, Missouri. That's part of our workforce retention program, right? And this is where I went to college. And so I'm very familiar with the area. If you're familiar with the Ozarks, Springfield is kind of the big small town right in the middle of everything that big enough they can do about anything. But the thing that I liked about this position is that we also serve a 10 county region, most of which is rural. And so I get the opportunity to not just help one community like I was in my past role, but to help 10 different counties market their communities, really tap into what makes their communities great, figure out what opportunities there are to move our region forward. So that's the Cliff Notes version.
Yeah, nice. Sounds like you're off to a great start and have found something that you're good at, that you're obviously passionate about, which makes work go so much easier and smoother and more enjoyable. I have to ask, as a small town kid growing up in agriculture, but pursuing a political science degree, what'd you have in mind for that?
This is going to surprise you. It surprises everybody. I actually started college as a music major, and that's what took me to Missouri State University. The best thing about being in a small town, and you can do and be a part of any club that you want to be all at the same time. And I was in everything. I did not want to sit in a classroom. I wanted to be out doing things. And so I was in band and choir. I was in quiz bowl. I was on the speech and debate team. I was in FFA. I was president of my 4-H club. So I tried to do as much as I possibly could. But then whenever it came time for me to graduate high school, I looked at all the things that I did and I said, what would I not mind doing on a daily basis? And I was really drawn to music at that time. And so I started as a vocal and trumpet performance major. I don't know what I wanted to do, but I just knew that I would find my place. And so I started in that. And I started out, I was overworked. I was in too many things. You get to college, you realize not everywhere is a small town where you can be a part of everything you want to be in.
Yeah.
And so I did kind of get burned out a little bit. But somewhere in there, I took a political science class. And in the back of my mind, the whole time that I wanted to be a music major, I was telling myself, I don't necessarily want to be a teacher. I don't know that I want to be an opera singer, something like that. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with that talent. But in my political science class, something really clicked in me that I wanted to be doing something that would be beneficial to the people around me and that would make a difference in their lives. And I had this kind of moment of, I think I like to sing because it's an opportunity to use my voice. And I think I had this moment of, how can I use my non singing voice to make a difference? And if I can't do that, what's the benefit, right? If I can't have a discussion with you and we can't get along, even though we disagree, if we can't have human conversations about what makes our world a better place, then honestly, the music stuff, that doesn't matter. And that is a way to reach people. But I realized that I just wanted to do more with my life. And so switched to political science, thinking that I would maybe be a legislative assistant somewhere, help write policy. I wanted to travel. I wanted to go to DC, potentially run for office someday. All of those aspirational things that, a political science major usually has. Somewhere along the line of me being a political science major, I also discovered city planning as an opportunity. And so that planted the seeds of economic development. And then after I graduated, I was done with school. I said, absolutely not, no more. I'm tired of being in a classroom, right? That high schooler is still in me. But then I got into economic development. And I realized you still need to keep learning. There's a lot more out there we don't know. And so right now I'm working on my master's degree at Missouri State University in public administration because I really believe that the civic side of our world is vastly under resourced and deserves the best because our cities and our governments are really the only consistent part of our lives, no matter what, in so many ways. We all need roads. We all need good schools. We all need a good, efficient government to help drive our own lives forward. And I just want to be part of that solution. So that's a very long way of saying I think being a civic minded citizen is part of our duty just as human beings. I think that comes from growing up in a small town. It comes from all the experiences that I had in a rural community where it was a bunch of people who wanted to move their community forward. And they were the 10 or 20 people that every small town has that are on every board and organization, just trying to make their community a better place. And a lot of times you see good results from that. So sorry for the long winded answer, but that's where I come from.
That's a great answer. And gosh, so much insight in there, Ben. I appreciate all of that. And, I'm glad that you brought up the benefits of growing up in a small town because, that's one of the things that we try to do with our podcast is just educate people about what rural America is all about because it means different things to different people. And I think there's a lot of misconceptions about what it is. But the opportunity to do lots of different things and be a part of different things helps shape somebody like you to really find themselves. And you described some different things that you kind of toyed with as you were nearing the end of your collegiate career and looking for opportunities. Those are all still out there for you. I mean, what you're doing right now is setting a really strong base for whatever you do in the future, whether it involves government or politics or sales. So I think you're in a great place. And obviously, you got your head on right and you're moving in the right direction. I guess your title is Manager of Business Development for the Springfield, Missouri Area Chamber of Commerce, which you had mentioned includes 10 counties. Talk a little bit about some of the things that you're involved in.
My primary goal and my primary duty that I'm tasked with outside of supporting boards, committees, all those things is business attraction. And so that means different things to different people. I'll come back to that here in a minute. My secondary responsibility is what we call business retention and expansion. So this is me going and meeting with our businesses one on one. And similar to what I did in Vernon County, this is what barriers are you having to growth? How can I help solve those for you? What issues are you having with workforce right now? Well, here's a resource that might be able to help you address that. And so through that piece of it, that's going to drive about 80% of all jobs, all new jobs created in your community is your existing businesses that you can go out and that you can help expand, incentive programs through helping to identify efficiencies, those types of things. So in that aspect, I'm like a free consultant that our chamber offers to our business community. And so we don't do anything with retail here at the chamber. We do office, we do manufacturing, and we do catalytic development. So the only exception to retail would be we have a Buc-ee's in Springfield, Missouri. It's the first Buc-ee's in the state, right? So the process was similar to what we would see with an industrial attraction project where they needed land, they needed infrastructure. And so we sat down and we brought the partners together. This wasn't me, this is my predecessor. I'm not trying to, but you bring the partners together and you say, how can we solve this problem? And when you do solve the problem, you get a new business. So then that's where like the business attraction side of things really complements that initiative. So on a day-to-day basis, it is a lot of strategic thinking about marketing as best we can, right? How do we reach the new businesses? There's also in economic development a lot of consultants that are hired to identify sites and communities on behalf of the business. And so a large part of my responsibility is just the relationship building with that pool of site selection consultants and firms, and in some cases, trade consulate generals of a country that they're looking to help businesses in Canada move to the United States and they want something in the Midwest. Okay, well, let me tell you why Missouri, as a rural state, and Springfield as a rural community, might be a good fit for this very similar sized business that might fit well here. So, other than that, my third primary, I think, is just internal relationships within the community and understanding what our partners with the utility company, with the city, with the county, and so many others, what they are seeing in the market, what they need, what they can offer to those businesses to help them grow.
Sounds like a great job.
I have a very fun job. I get to do something new every day, get to wear a lot of hats. And the coolest part though is getting to tour all the manufacturers because I'm still a little kid at heart and I like seeing the big machines run. So it's a lot of fun.
Well, and you're building a heck of a network that can only help you as you move forward. Well, as I think about Springfield, our director actually lives in Springfield. It's a pretty diverse city. slash town because, like you said, well, it's both, I think. But when you think about the kind of businesses that you're trying to attract, are there certain targets that you're going after?
Absolutely. One of our biggest strength is that we are so diverse. And you'll see this across the state of Missouri as well. But Springfield and the Ozarks have an extremely diversified economy. It's not just manufacturing. We've got Branson, Missouri, so we've got a little bit of tourism as well. So we're able to sustain a lot of retail growth. We've got a lot of office space because Expedia has a large call center here, for example. They're based in Seattle, and the labor here is significantly cheaper than what you would have to pay in Seattle, but our cost of living is super low as well. And they're still paying higher wages than our local average, right? So when I'm talking about targeting businesses and targeting specific industries, our number one priority is to actually increase the economic well-being of the region. And so we are usually targeting businesses that pay at or above our county average wage, depending on which of the 10 counties we're in. And we are targeting businesses that are looking to locate in communities where it'll make a significant difference, or that we've got inventory that would complement their needs really well. We really want to have a good interconnectedness with those businesses culturally. We want them to be invested in the community, those types of things. So, what that ends up looking like are we target a lot of manufacturing, especially food processing. We target stainless steel as well and anything related to metallurgy because not many people know this. Springfield, Missouri is the stainless steel capital of North America in terms of the number of people making tanks out of stainless steel components, parts, those types of things, very high value products, which actually ties back to agriculture and the food processing market. And then whenever it comes to office space, professional services are huge for us as well. Engineering firms, architecture firms, call centers, and back office support because they have such high job numbers usually associated with them. They can take up a lot of good office space. We have not seen a lot of those since the start of COVID, though. But at the end of the day, we want to support the businesses that are looking to invest in the community and increase our tax base from that component, and then also create above average jobs so we can help create a more diversified economy with more upward mobility. And then at the same time, that's sort of the external facing. Internally, what we also look to do is do things to help keep our cost of living and our quality of life as high as possible. So whenever we have that increase of tax base, how are we using that to help our current and potential future citizens enjoy the life that they want here in Springfield? And so that looks like investing in trails. We've got over 120 miles of trails in the city limits of Springfield. That's an insane number. I mean, like we were looking at a side by side with one of the top 10 cities in the US. They've only got like 60 miles of trails because the outdoors are just so important to us as a culture. And little things like that. How can we help with housing? How can we help with downtown revitalization? So I keep giving you longer answers, but it's a fun science to look at whenever we're talking about how can we target this industry. One of the reasons food processing is so critical that I mentioned, we are a region known for our dairy industry and our cheese manufacturing, got a huge Kraft Heinz presence. Recently, we've become an egg hub in Missouri. We're the top producing egg region in the state of Missouri because of Vital Farms, which does pasture raised eggs, working with over 400 family farms to produce that. And so, that's a great example of what value add that like a food processor can really add and multiply in your community by offering a premium for these pasture raised eggs to all of these local families that are then able to continue growing their operation. And it's an ethical company. It's a perfect case study. And at the same time, the processing facility here in Springfield, they produce 5 million eggs a day from those 450 to 500 family farms. That's an incredible amount of eggs. Again, just that value added. So we're trying to continue that component of wealth. We're not just trying to have jobs for the sake of having jobs. What kind of investments are going to make the most bang for our buck here in the region?
It's okay to have long answers because you got a lot to talk about. I think it's pretty exciting. And I thought that I knew Springfield, but you're opening my eyes to some things that I really didn't realize. And I ran across you on LinkedIn because you had made a post about the significance of how the three urban areas of Missouri were so tied to agriculture. But I'm hearing it right now firsthand. I had no idea how involved that area is. It's very impressive.
Yeah. So for Springfield, we have had very consistent growth for about 20 to 30 years. That growth started about 40 and then almost 100 years ago. Because what happened was there was a conversation in a lot of small towns, which Springfield was at the time, that was like, do we want to keep growing or do we want to be the way that we are forever? Because we love our small towns, right? We love the culture, we love the people, we love the slow pace of life. Do we really want to be a huge city? And there are communities that actually said, no, we don't want to grow. And those communities have not changed in the past 50 years, right? Springfield, though, in the 40s, we were already historically this dairy hub. If you know the region, you know the geography, a lot of hills, a lot of hollers, a lot of trees, not a whole lot of pasture land. So what that ends up looking like is all of our cows, have one side of their legs are shorter than the other so they can stand on those hills. And we have a lot more cow calf operations than we do feeder cattle. So that translates really well to dairy, 100 years ago. So then when World War II broke out, the US government said, we got to put some meat on these bones of these boys that were sitting overseas. And so they really invested heavily in the dairy industry. At the same time, we had a company called Paul Mueller that was basically a steel company that was working on cars. And they said, how can we help tap into this market? So they started making stainless steel tanks to transport and process dairy across the country and to help with that process. So then from there, though, they were really the leader in doing that. And we were such a leader in dairy that that translated really well. Over the years, Paul Mueller grew exponentially. And then over the years, the engineers that he had hired, the experts in their field that had grown up making tanks, they saw other opportunities in that sector. They started spinning off their own small manufacturers. That's how we became the stainless steel capital of North America, is because of that spinoff, of that effect of we're going to help this industry expand. Dairy is a great opportunity, right? It's a raw product. But what are the other multipliers and the impact that are indirect, that are in what we call induced as well, that are going to help that industry grow and they're going to grow themselves? So that is the kind of thing that we want to target. But it's just interesting now, as a bunch of Springfield culturally, I would say, is a bunch of small towns smushed together with one downtown. That kind of growth comes from the food manufacturing market. You look at Kansas City and the stockyards, even their tie to barbecue, or St. Joe, Missouri, with their tie to the West. All of these things, they come from origins in agriculture and being that central hub where farmers could buy wagon wheels, where they could buy components, and then they just flourish from there. And that, I believe that it's still ingrained in us, that that's who we are. We are agricultural people that just happen to be living in cities.
Interesting perspective. And as I think about that, the other important part that you mentioned was the plan, was the vision that the founders, the leaders in the community saw out ahead that took them to where you are today, which continues, I'm sure, to evolve and grow those industries where you have a strength, but also tap into new ones as opportunities arise. And I'm interested, you had said that you serve a 10 county region. So I know a big part of that is retention and helping your existing manufacturers grow. And then the other part is attracting new ones to you. So when you hear about someone, a lead comes along, they make a contact, comes from a site selector or from whomever, do you take a look at your region and say, okay, this part of the region is going to serve your needs better than this part? Or do you say, okay, here's our package, here's all the opportunities, what interests you? Or does it work both ways?
A little bit of both. A lot of the communities in our 10 county region, they will have county-wide programs. So this is a group of, right now it's about 7 other economic development organizations. that know their communities inside and out. And so we have to maintain a good relationship with them, and we do. It's which I say it like it's a we have to. It's very easy to. So whenever I get a lead, my normal process is I send out an email to those communities and to those contacts, and I say, we've got a site selection consultant that's looking for 100 acres. They're looking for this kind of water capacity, this electric capacity, this gas capacity. They're going to hire X number of people and they're going to invest this many millions of dollars. And send me what inventory that you have that you feel like checks all those boxes. And there are a lot of projects that do, and there are a lot that don't. And there are a lot that Springfield doesn't check the boxes on. Our philosophy in marketing as a region is we know that if we can get them here, that they're going to see what a special place this region is. And whenever we talk to consultants who come, they agree, they solidify and affirm that this is a great region with low cost of business, low cost of living, with great outdoors and high quality of life. That's why we want to come to Springfield. Okay, that's great. The hardest thing about that, though, is getting them here in the first place. And so we market as a region. We're not, I'm going to say padding the numbers because that's what it sounds like we're doing, but that's really not what we're doing. What we do is we look at the data outside of the city limits of Springfield, which city of Springfield is 160,000. But what that doesn't tell you is that over 250,000 people work in Springfield every day. And our population grows by 100,000 every single day. And then that workforce comes from those 10 counties. We have over 650,000 people in that 10 county region. And we can look at heat maps to see where they live and where they're working and what they do in their free time, right? We can see all of those types of trends. And so part of my job is how do we tell that story on a regional level to the consultants that are sitting behind the desk and they're just plugging in the numbers of what they find on the census data? We are bigger than we look, and we are more powerful than we look, and we have a lot of stories about who we are as a community and as a region that our site selectors and that our businesses really tie into and that they really appreciate. So it's a little bit of both. But at the end of the day, part of my job is how can I amplify and be a force multiplier for the individual counties and communities? And there are certainly times where we would look at a situation and say, we have the inventory, but this culturally would do a lot better in Monette, Missouri, for example, or Buffalo, or Marshfield, Missouri, or even Branson. So, how can we maximize their impact as well?
So how do you tell those stories? Because you're right. I mean, we live in this virtual world and it's so easy to gather, most of the information that you're wanting to get online before you ever even talk to anybody. We see that in our business. When somebody decides they want an advertising agency, they're looking around and they're talking to people before we even know they're looking. So then by the time they do contact you, they're further down the business cycle. But how do you tell that story? How do you let a site selector in Rhode Island know about Springfield area?
What we're working on right now is making sure that we are presenting at our very best. We are rebuilding from scratch our business attraction website. Historically, we've always been the Springfield Regional Economic Partnership. That's what we call the 10 county region. We're actually changing it back to Ozarks Regional Economic Partnership because there are 50 Springfields in the US. There's only one Ozarks, and we are really the only major hub in the Ozarks. So we think that that's going to help automatically draw a distinction, automatically tell a story through our website. Historically, and this is just a side by side, right? Our old website has a lot of data on it, and it kind of does a lot of the work for the site selectors in terms of data. Now things have evolved, right? They've all got tools that they can pull up. Here's every data point that I would ever need for any region. So what we want to add to our website is a section about the stories that built Springfield and tells the story about Vital Farms and their impact on the community, or the history of Kraft Heinz, or the history of Paul Mueller. What we want to try to do through that is also tell stories without them realizing it, right? That it's about the assets that we have. So, for example, in Springfield, we have what we call Springfield Underground, which is an underground cave system that was an old quarry that got mined out. And now it is a 3 million square foot underground industrial park.
That's impressive.
Very impressive. And it's super great for food manufacturing because of the opportunity for cold zone storage and the fact that if the power goes out, that cave stays cold for 3 days without any power, right? So those types of how can we highlight those assets? How can we highlight the sites that we have? How can we tell the story of, Missouri is not really number one in any agricultural commodity, but we are in the top 10 for almost every agricultural commodity. What does our region specialize in? Well, right now it's eggs and dairy and cheese. How can we help highlight those things? So we're going to have a dedicated section on our website that really just tries to steer you towards like knowing the stories and the data all in one, which is easier said than done. But we want them to have a landing page at the end of the day where they have access to all of those things. And it's not just, oh, look at us. We're the lowest cost of business. We're the lowest cost of living. We're all these things. We have high quality of life because that's what every community says. And site selectors are getting tired of hearing that. They want to know what stories built us because it also sticks in their mind. It's not just, oh, Springfield has a great manufacturing base. It's Springfield is the capital of stainless steel or remanufacturing or dairy or any of these things.
Is it mostly about inbound marketing, putting your assets in a way that is going to attract people to you? Because I know it wasn't that many years ago when site selection magazines were big time. Every region, every community had ads in the site selection magazines, and they've gone from, this size to this size, and, everything is online for the most part. But is that how they're finding you? Are they searching for things that you have assets for? Or do you need to like educate them so that when they have somebody that's looking, they know about you?
Again, a little bit of both. This comes back to like the reason I exist, right? My position exists is so that I can go to trade shows and conferences that those consultants are at, and I can build those introductory relationships, and I can just kind of plant the seeds as best I can, and then follow up with check out our website, check out the stories that we have about Springfield and those types of things. And then from there, we hope that it sticks to them, that they remember, oh, Blue Box mac and cheese comes from Springfield, for example. Then, in addition to that, we do occasionally, we will get on a list of site selectors and say, hey, we'll send them an email. We had this new site come online. Maybe check it out. Here's a refresher about whatever else. We do try to add that we have a newsletter that we send out. Some of the people that invest in our economic development program, sometimes we'll take excerpts from that and send it to the site selectors, to the businesses that we're wanting to target, those types of things. At the end of the day, though, it's relationships creating a narrative that they remember. And so then that ends up looking like me traveling around a lot, handing out business cards, but also trying to direct them to where they need to go for that inbound marketing aspect.
So you're really doing sales and marketing in your role. As a powerhouse in the region, how do you work with state economic development? They're bringing you leads, or how's that work?
So in Missouri, we have Missouri Department of Economic Development. That's more of the retention and expansion side. So taking care of the businesses we have, and then also sort of the startup piece as well. And then we also have what we call Missouri Partnership, which is a public private partnership funded by a nonprofit foundation and the state of Missouri. They are really the marketing arm and they're the business attraction arm. So they are the ones that usually send me the leads that the state gets. And then we get our own leads locally or from various sources, right? A lot of our projects come from Missouri Partnership. They'll send us the RFIs, request for information, that say, hey, we need to check all these boxes. And so then I take that, I fill it out for our region, and then I identify some of the sites in our region and I send it out to our regional partners at the same time and say, what do we have that really works? Then I send that back to the state. They'll usually be the ones working with consultants for the statewide search. A lot of times it's the same consultants that we're working with on our regional searches, right? And so it's not just the technical information and here's all the boxes we check. We send a cover letter. We try to send marketing and collateral that also tells some of the stories. It's not just like, hey, our region's the best. It's here's the companies that have recently expanded. Here's our strengths in these industries. Here's our workforce numbers, those types of things.
Well, it sounds like you have a really well developed program. But I know that economic development is very competitive from one community to another, and one region to another, one state to another. And it is a global enterprise that we work in. What are the challenges that you face on a day-to-day basis?
The biggest challenge is honestly telling the story internally to our community why XYZ is unrealistic and trying to be a steady voice to your community and stakeholders. The market is going to determine your business growth, always, right? Like if the national economy is tanking, there's not going to be a lot of companies in the country or the world that are looking to grow and expand. But I can't control that. What I can control is are the stories that we're telling, the data that we are able to present, those types of things. And then I can work internally to make sure that when a business does get here, we've got the room to grow and that we've got a place for them. Traditional economic development kind of indicates that incentives, the total cost of doing business, it's a numbers game, it's a math problem. Right now, across the country and the world, that's really not as strongly the case because a lot of times site readiness is as much of an incentive as your local tax abatement program, right? And they care more about being able to locate in a quick turnaround time than anything. And so telling that story to our local stakeholders so that we can go out and prepare. There's a rural podcast. What we like to say is we're preparing our field for rain. We're not just going to like sit on our pasture and hope that, corn springs out of the ground. We have to go in and we have to cultivate it. We have to make sure that the infrastructure is in place so that whenever we do have something that we can plant there, it's a good opportunity for us. And we're going to care about the soil quality. We're going to care about all of the everything that we have around that pasture as well to help make it work. That is more challenging than it sounds. Everybody wants a Trader Joe's, for example, in Springfield. All right, when are we going to get this? There are numbers to this. There's a reason that we don't have one right now. And trying to tell that narrative internally as well as externally. And then also going out, identifying the sites, working with our civic partners to help make sure that we are proactively investing in the infrastructure to help make those sites happen. Doing things like downtown revitalization that help our housing market, that help long-term downtown revitalization. We're going to have a lower crime rate. We're going to have less poverty. We're going to have a higher quality of life. Those types of things actually do a lot to help tell the stories to the businesses and the site selectors, because whenever they come to visit, they don't want to see a crumbling economy. And your downtown is like the number one indicator of how well your economy is doing. That should be the hub. That's really the most challenging part, is not going out and telling the stories, because I can talk about Springfield all day. It is how can we make our community ready to receive whenever there's an opportunity that arises.
And that's a great analogy. And I love how you talk about it with the rural slant on it, because that really is important. But as we wrap up today, and first of all, I really appreciate you being on here. It's been really interesting, and there's been a ton of great takeaways, great insight. When I say the words rural America, what does that mean to you, Ben?
That's a great question. I think rural America is as much of a cultural meaning as a geographic meaning. You can go to Kansas City or St. Louis. You can even go to like Chicago or New York, and you're going to find people who culturally are extremely rural, who have rural roots. It's a feeling of, I like being able to see the stars. I love the outdoors. I care about the world that I live in. Not to say that like people who are urban don't believe that, but it's just kind of this mindset difference. And maybe it's some of the things that I talked about of, if you grow up in a rural community, you grow up with such a limited population that everybody in your community needs to be working hard in order to move the community forward. Nobody's going to come save you. And that's something I tell a lot of small towns who are like talking about, oh, we need economic development. Nobody's coming to save you. You have to save yourselves. You have to get together and you have to look at how can we move our community forward outside of just, we're going to market just for the sake of marketing. You need to have a plan. You need to know exactly what's going to happen. And that takes the hard work that I think a lot of small towns struggle with because they're at capacity. You asked what rural means to me. I think it's a little bit of all of those things. We can see a better future. We want to do the work. We want to put in the hours to make it happen because that's who we came from. And I think that in a bigger community, there's just more people. And so you expect that to kind of be taken care of for you, I feel like. And you can have a little bit more leisure time because of that. You can enjoy things a little bit more. And I think those are all great problems for us to have. And I'm very happy for them. I personally love doing things. I don't like being in an office. I like being out, seeing things happen, and I like helping make things happen. And I think that's a difference. And that's what it means to me. You can be rural and be anywhere in the world, but you can't replicate that. You can't put your finger on it either.
Great perspective. I couldn't agree more. It is a mindset, and you can be anywhere.
Yeah.
Hey, Ben, I really have appreciated you being on the show and visiting with you this morning.
Hey, Cliff, thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure for me to be here. Let me know what I can do to support you and your community.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that very much, and good luck to you in everything that you're working on. And folks, thanks for listening to Outdrive. I hope you've enjoyed our visit today with Ben Vickers, Manager of Business Development for what is now Springfield, Missouri Area Chamber of Commerce. Come back again next week, and I'll take you down the roads of rural America where it's heaven on earth.
Thanks for taking a ride with us on Outdrive. This episode is complete, so head on over to ecallis.com for more insight you can apply to help drive your business growth. And be sure to sign up for our free monthly e-letter, Outthink, for even more helpful content about marketing to rural America. Have a great day and keep on driving.